So in my years as a coach, working with executives and entrepreneurs, I have seen many different approaches to forming a business strategy. Can you describe some essentials needed to create a business strategy?
Well, sitting down with a team, well, it depends if it's a person on their own or a team. If it's a team, then everybody needs to contribute. Because if people are not aligned with either the why or the core values, chances are they won't stay. So you start there. And where I begin with there's a lot of different nuances depending if it's a brand new company or if it's an existing company. So are we talking about a brand new company?
How about we start off with a brand new company, maybe an entrepreneur, and then also interested to know maybe for a more established company, some executives in the team scenario that you mentioned.
Okay. So when you're beginning, I there's a lot of importance around the role that you're going to fill because most entrepreneurs, I'll give you one example. It's much more fun if I share an example. So I knew this fellow who used to sell printing repairs, like for printers and computers. And he was amazing. He was a top salesperson. He did very, very well. And he decided it was time to start his own business because why was he making all this money for the company when he should have his own business? So he had his business for about 6 months at this point when I talked to him. And I said, "So how are your sales?" He says, "Oh, I haven't made any sales yet." And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, right now I'm learning accounting." So this is a common mistake. You have to know what you're good at, and then you have to surround yourself with people, whether they're fractional people or, consultants, whatever. You should still concentrate on where your strength was. So I think that's one of the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into. And then create a vision. What does that look like? So recently, I actually found out, I found something that I think is marvelous. So we all behave in the present based on the past, right? Who we are. And Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a book called Be Your Future Self Now. I love this book because the premise is instead of operating from your past, have a real clear vision of your future, reverse engineer it, and then in your present, you're working towards your future. And that describes whether it's your personal life or your business life. So it starts with that vision. And once you know where you want to end up, today it's so easy to reverse engineer things.
Mm-hmm.
I told my family that I finally met my soulmate. I just didn't know it would be a robot.
I love it. I love it. So that made me think of a couple of questions, Dr. Frumi, to kind of piggyback on that. So, for example, that story that you shared about the entrepreneur who was learning accounting. What if someone has done that strengths-based work, like we have maybe, and they've taken it and, strategic is not in their top five, maybe it's not even in their top 10 or top 15. How would someone go about, and in this case, we'll talk about a solo entrepreneur, how would they go about forming a business strategy?
I think they'd have a really hard time and they'd have to hire someone.
Okay.
I think it's that simple
Uh-huh.
because if it doesn't come naturally, it's something they're going to struggle with all the time. And I think that strategy shows up pretty much for most entrepreneurs somewhere in their top five.
Hmm. Yeah. I would agree. I think most of the entrepreneurs I know are strategic. So I like how you teased out the difference between, the solo entrepreneur and maybe the executive team of a more developed company. So let's think about that angle, right? Maybe it's an executive team of a smaller mid-sized business, and they want to focus on their business strategy. I heard you mention earlier that the whole team should be involved, but what might their process be in terms of creating a business strategy?
So I'll tell you about one team that I worked with. They were a lot of fun. They were 8 men. They were all in my sweet spot. So I love working with millennials or Gen Z because they love me. I'm not their mother, but they tell me everything and then I know how to help them, right? So these guys kind of fit the bill. And we started off by doing an assessment to figure out where they were at. So we did a combination of the DISC with the 5 cohesive behaviors of a team. And, it starts with trust, and then building on trust comes constructive conflict, commitment, etc. And what they were really surprised about, they were green on everything except accountability. And so that's what they really needed. And so the whole idea of having a plan and having priorities fits perfectly with accountability, right? So that's where we started, because sometimes you can't just tell someone, well, you don't really have a strategy and you really need to do this or that. It kind of has to come up so it's their idea. And then they get really committed to it. So once we're in the room with people, we did a retreat. We did like a 2.5-day workshop together. And we teased out the values and the why, etc. And the values were really fun because one guy said, well, thoughtful. And everyone went, thoughtful. So when he explained what thoughtful was all about, they all agreed. They just chose a different word to describe it. But once the team all agreed to their core values, their level of commitment already grew. And once they adopted their why, etc., it was really, they knew the business of their business. What they didn't know was how to execute properly and make sure that everyone was on the same page. And when a team works together to create that plan, then they're on the same page. And everybody needs to know how they contribute to the plan too. And if they don't agree, that's where healthy conflict comes in. It's important for people to feel safe in any team. And that's a big part of what I like to do, is to create that feeling of safety so that people really trust each other, and that they have to have tough conversations every now and then.
Yeah, I agree. And I love your process of starting with assessments. The listeners, many of them know that I love personality assessments, and we do some organizational assessments. I think they're so important. And then what you said about, finding that common ground in terms of communication and maybe that healthy conflict.